Welcome to my new Senate video, and let's start diving into Florida. As many of you know, Ashley Moody was tapped as the new senator by DeSantis, and she's a very electable candidate, and she's probably gonna make it impossible for Democrats to even drop this down to likely are, especially since there's not even a good Democrat rumored to run so easily. This is R plus 12, probably actually I'm gonna put R plus 15 because of Moody, and could even be R plus 20, so easily safe R. Alaska, there has been some rumors that, which have you seen the community post, that Mary Peltola will instead run for governor instead of Senate, so this is gonna make it easy for Sullivan to win here in 2026, so yeah, I'm gonna put this and move it up to safe R. And now for Texas, which is really interesting, John Cornyn is looking like he might actually get primaried by Ken Paxton, who is already publicly interested in primarying John Cornyn, since most people in the GOP see him as a rhino, and so that's gonna make it very interesting. Nothing for the Democrats, so I do still think, because of how rough the primary will be for the GOP, think this will drop down to likely R, but still a GOP victory by 10 to 12%. And now for Illinois, actually, and a lot of Democrats are actually looking to retire, so don't be surprised if Dick calls it quits in the coming days or actually decides to not run in the near future. So that's why there's already someone that has formed a committee to run, but Durbin hasn't done it yet. He's already quite old. What age is he? He's like the same age as Biden, or what? Around the same age. So yeah, it's looking less and less likely that Dick Durbin will run for a re-election. There's some GOP nominees, but there's still time. It's still 2025. So like I said in the past, I do think Illinois is trending a bit to the right. And if Durbin does run, or even if he doesn't run and we get another Democrat, it's most likely going to be 10 to 12% victory, likely D. And now for Iowa. In Iowa, you got Joni Ernst, who is running for re-election. Issue is a lot of MAGAs don't see her as being a rhino because of her not really fully backing Trump in the 2024 primary. There's also a big problem for her because there's already a libertarian primary with Thomas Lane probably looking to run in 2026, which is going to be a big problem for the GOP, since usually the libertarians take away probably like 3% of the vote. So that means it's going to be very unlikely that she wins by a safe margin. Probably actually going to be the same as 2020, I'm guessing. I mean, she has some incumbency. I'm going to say she wins here by 7 to 9%. So yeah, she still wins here, but not by much, to be honest with you, which makes sense since it's a Trump midterm, but we will see how that goes. So for New Mexico, there's not that much news. I'm guessing the incumbent Senator Lujan will run for re-election in 2026. Probably going to be a similar margin to what we saw back then. But because it's going to be a Trump midterm, I'm guessing in the environment's going to be a bit better for Democrats. And I expect the incumbent senator to win here by 6 to 8%, especially since I don't see a big GOP nominee running in 2026 for Senate, but yeah, we will see how that goes though. And now for Virginia, this race will really depend on who runs. Mark Warner is another Democrat who is quite older, and he might not run for re-election because it's Trump midterm, so a lot of Democrats think they can just retire. Glenn Youngkin could run, and I think that would be a very interesting point for him to run, especially if Trump's popularity is still around the 50s or low or high 40s. That could maybe be the make or break for him to run in 2026 for Senate. I don't think it's gonna be solid D, unlike his last time he ran in for Democrats. Warner ran and got 12%, especially with a lot of the people that used to work in the federal departments really getting laid off. I think a lot of those people are gonna go back to their home state of New York, California, or whatever, and that's gonna be a big mass exodus in the future from the DC metro, which is gonna make it easier for the GOP to win, I'm guessing. But still, that could take years and not decades. So yeah, I'm gonna say that Mark Warner will win here, but by only 6 to 8%. It really depends on who the GOP will nominate though. And now for Ohio, more bad news for Democrats, and this is due to the fact that, as you can see, John Husted was appointed, and the problem for Democrats is that he's not as MAGA, but he's not a rhino, so I think he basically has a shot at just win here easily. And the fact is that there's already some people saying that, some rumors in DC that Sherrod Brown will actually not run for Senate. That is still up to debate. He might still run for Senate. He might just run for governor instead, but who knows, he might just straight up retire, and that's something you gotta look out for. Tim Ryan probably gonna be this nominee for Senate yet again, but yeah, it's not looking good for the Democrats in Ohio. John Husted is easily gonna win, and I'm guessing Husted fits into Ohio quite well, and I think Husted will win by, I'm guessing, like 5 to 7%, so yeah, likely are. And for some big news from Minnesota, as many of you heard, Tina Smith is actually retiring And she's actually not that old, so kudos to her for deciding to bow out at the age of 66, which is very young for a Democrat though. So yeah, there's already people running for her seat after her retirement announcement. Peggy Flanagan, the lieutenant governor of Minnesota, already declared that she's running right after Tim Walz, funnily enough, said he was thinking of running. But yeah, Peggy Flanagan just basically stepped over Tim Walz, and yeah, I think she's probably gonna be the Democrat nominee. There's also a lot of people. I mean, we got Omar, which would lose easily against the GOP, which is crazy, but I don't think she's gonna be the Democrat nominee. You also got Royce White already running in 2026, and a Royce White versus Omar election would be the funniest one, but I'm guessing probably someone like Robbins will be the nominee, or Fishback maybe. I could see that happen, but yeah, either way, the state is just too blue leaning. I still think Flanagan will be the nominee or someone like that, and that does mean Minnesota will still be a likely state, but barely though. It drops down to only a 5% win for Democrats. And now for the final likely state, we can now move on to New Hampshire. So this is another state that the Democrat might retire. As you can see, Jean Shaheen, she is over what? She's 84 years old by the end of her term, but she has already filled paperwork, so that makes it kind of awkward. So maybe she undoes that paperwork, maybe she doesn't, but yeah, just keep a lookout on that for sure. And then you got Scott Brown, who wants to run yet again for Senate, and the last time he did was 2014, and he lost in a red wave, so I don't think he would win still. And yeah, Chris Sununu declined, so that's a big L for the GOP. And I'm guessing that even if Shaheen retires, or if she doesn't retire, I'm guessing that New Hampshire will be likely D by around 4 to 6%, so maybe it could drop just like Minnesota to lean D. But yeah, easy Democrat victory in New Hampshire. And now we can move on to the lean states finally. Yeah, a lot of changes from last video, but for the first one, Maine. So in Maine, you got Susan Collins, one of the few senators that is in a state that went to the opposite party. So yeah, she might get Sherrod Brown, if you know what I'm saying, but still, she might be able to win. Who knows? The main issue for Susan Collins is the fact that she's really voting for a lot of Trump. She voted for a lot of Trump nominees, and that could come back to haunt her, but who knows? Still, the main problem for her is really the Democrat nominee. Jared Golden could run. I still think he's going to run for governor. Janet Mills, the current governor of Maine, would be a very good candidate to go against her. She would be very old, though. I mean, basically, if she wants to be a Jim Justice type of thing. And I do think Mills would defeat Susan Collins. It just depends a lot on the economy and how things are, and it's just a lot of what ifs that could happen, but still, it's gonna be very interesting. There's also an independent, but the race has gotten closer since last time, so I'm gonna say that Susan Collins will win again, but I am getting less and less convinced that she will win re-election. Still, I'm gonna say she wins by 2 to 4%, but keep an eye on this race. It might drop down to tilt or maybe even flip in the next video. And now for a race that has a lot of changes and a lot of big ones in that. For Michigan. In Michigan, as many of you know, Gary Peters, another Democrat that decided to call it quits, is now running for re-election, which leaves a lot of people to run. And the main nominee for the Democrats is actually Indiana Mayor and former Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg. And Pete Buttigieg, as if you've seen the community post before, he actually led by a landslide in a poll, in the primary poll, and it does look like at the moment he's going to be the nominee by the Democrats, and he will do terribly unless something big changes or the establishment cuts him out. Pete Buttigieg would be on his way to be the Democrat nominee, and that'll be a big problem for Democrats, which I'm going to talk in a second. And Mike Rogers, at the moment, is the most likely nominee for the GOP, especially because he got so close to winning in 2024, but he narrowly lost. But lucky for him, Pete Buttigieg is the leading nominee for the Democrats right now. That could change easily, but yeah. As I was saying, Pete Buttigieg, first of all, he's a carpetbagger. Whether you like it or not, I know that his partner is from Michigan, but still, he would also get a record low turnout from African-American voters. He also get a really low turnout from Muslim voters, and I think that is mostly due to the fact that he's gay, and that could really hurt him with a lot of those demographics. Unfortunately for him, he still could win. Bear in mind, Tammy Baldwin, she has a partner, and she won in a Trump state, so there's a shot that Pete Buttigieg could still win, but Democrats would really be risking a seat that hasn't gone to the GOP in decades, and I don't know if they're going to be willing to risk that. I'm guessing that the results in Michigan, if he were to be the nominee, would pretty much be the same ones that we saw with Trump I think be exactly that margin. He would do quite terribly with those 3 most win margins for Democrats, and whoever the GOP nominate would narrowly win by a lean margin. 0.75% to 2.75% against Pete Buttigieg could drop down to tilt. But yeah, Democrats have a big problem in Michigan. Let's go to North Carolina. Tom Tillis, he's kind of the similar thing for Susan Collins. He has voted for all the Trump nominees essentially, and good for him though is that Mark Robinson declined to run. He's basically retiring from politics, I think, so that's very good for him. Lara Trump, I also think she won't run, so I think it's gonna be Tom Tillis winning the GOP primary quite easily, while the Democrats, Willie Nickel will likely announce a Senate bid quite soon. He might announce it by the time that this video goes out, but yeah, expect that to happen. But Roy Cooper, it is looking less and less likely that he will run for Senate. As many of you know, I just posted about how he got a job at Harvard, and I think that him getting a job at Harvard, it might mean he might not run for Senate. He could still run for Senate, still have that part-time job. It is looking like less and less likely that Roy Cooper will run, but still, there's also a shot that he still runs. Bear in mind, there's also Jeff Jackson, who could make a decent nominee for the Democrats still because of his appeal to young voters. It is a bit boring that we haven't gotten a lot of news in these key swing states, but it does look like Tom Tillis is on his way to get lucky yet again, and he probably will barely win by 0.75%. But if Roy Cooper runs, I will flip this, but if he doesn't, then tilt R. And now for the biggest race, in my opinion, we gotta go with Georgia. Incumbent Jon Ossoff running for re-election. Issue is some donors are pissed at him for not being as pro-Israel as some other Democrats, so that could really hurt him a bit with donors. There's also other things like, for example, we haven't gotten any news on if Brian Kemp will run. Is still a potential. He might not run. He might run. Who knows? It's still getting to that point where a lot of these nominees will announce that they're gonna officially run. So even if Brian Kemp is not the nominee, you got people like MTG, Buddy Carter, Mike Collins, John King. I don't think he's gonna win though. John King, Rich McCormick, who will probably run if Brian Kemp doesn't go for it. The issue for it is that the only person I could see winning this Senate race against an incumbent like Jon Ossoff is Brian Kemp. It is looking like Jon Ossoff will get lucky yet again and barely win by a tilt margin. But yeah, keep an eye on Georgia, North Carolina, and Michigan, since these 3 races could easily flip back and forth between parties. As you can see, the GOP wins with 54 seats, picking up Michigan, while the Democrats retain 46 seats. Let me know what your map looks like. As always, feel free to leave a like, join the Discord, and the channel membership, and have a good rest of your day.